This will be part two, New France. We should be able to wrap it up in this part. All right, so this Count de Frontenac is the governor general of New France. And what he really does with goading from the king, he encourages these fur trappers and merchants here in New France to start exploring the lands to the west out here around the Great Lakes and start exploring them west of Quebec and Montreal and things around the Great Lakes. Okay, so a lot of trappers go over there looking. One of the big things they're looking for is could we maybe find that Northwest Passage, that thing that might go across North America to get to the Pacific Ocean. They're not going to be able to find it, okay, because we know that there is not one. All right. Lands weren't easy to reach. There was lots of rapids and shallow water, and it prevented these big French, like sailing ships from traveling very far inland. So what they found out was, you talk to the natives, you talk to the Huron people. How do you get around? Well, they told them, hey, dummies, look, we build birch bark canoes to get around. They're good in the shallow water. You can get around the rapids, and also there's an example of a birch bark canoe. We saw those earlier in the year with the Eastern Woodlands. Okay, and another cool thing about them is they're very light. So if you got to get out and walk around rapids, or if you got to get out and go around a waterfall, or if you got to get out and walk a couple miles across land to go from one river to the next, very nice and light, able to carry them around pretty good. So that helps out the French, and they do some exploring. All right, Native Americans often told these French trappers about this great big old river to the west, okay, larger than all the others. And the Algonquin people called it the Mississippi River. And the Mississippi River means father of waters. So the people were basically saying this is the big daddy, the big granddaddy of all the rivers. Great big thing, a mile wide in some spots, very deep in others. Okay, so the French want to try to find this thing. They're thinking maybe that'll be the Northwest Passage. It takes them across North America. All right, but it's not. But so just remember, Mississippi means father of waters. So the French guys go over. So they've been looking for this thing called the Northwest Passage. It's not going to be, but they hope maybe the Mississippi River might be. All right, but it's not. All right. Okay, that's kind of the end of what I had in the slides. What the big idea of this is, and I just kind of read the kids something from the book that were here. Whole bunch of different French-sounding names of guys: Jacques Marquette, Joly, LaSalle, bunch of different guys' names. What they did was they sailed down the Mississippi River. They explored the Mississippi River Valley, and they claimed it for France. And the crazy way you claimed land back then was, I think I said this about Hudson, was, we say we're going to claim any land that touches this river. So they claimed all the land around the Mississippi River. Then they said we're going to claim any land that touches any of the tributary rivers that flow into the Mississippi River. So they did that. So by the time the mid-1700s rolls around, New France has grown from just a tiny little bit of Canada up here to a great big area that basically includes the whole middle part of the United States. The boundaries or the border were really the Rocky Mountains out here in the west, the Appalachian Mountains here in the east that separated, where we live, that separated New France from the original 13 colonies for the English. So they had this whole great big area. All this blue here was what became New France, all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. Okay, and then they figured out they had a nice route. You could come in through the Gulf of St. Lawrence, through the water, St. Lawrence River, across the Great Lakes, down the Mississippi River, come out at the Gulf of Mexico, and sail back to France. So they had some sort of easy ways to get in here to their colony. But there was a big difference, and it was in the population. In New France, the whole colony of New France, there was only about 55,000 people by the early 1700s. Only 55,000 people in this huge amount of land. That was nice because the natives liked the fact that they weren't bringing too many people to try to take over their land and over-trap and stuff. But the bad part is the English colonies here, by about this time period that we're going to learn about next, they had about 1 to 2 million people living in this tight, cramped little space here. Right? 55,000 in all this, and about 1 to 2 million over here. That's about a 20-to-1 ratio. Like there was 20 people over here for every one person over in New France. Okay? And eventually it's going to get kind of bad because a lot of these English colonists here are going to start coming over the Appalachian Mountains over into New France trying to claim land. And that's going to start the little thingy we call later on called the French and Indian War. And there was so many more people here in the English colonies because to get into the inner part of New France. You either had to come, all through these rivers and down the Mississippi, or come around through here and up the Mississippi and get off and go hike through the woods and go set up a cabin or whatever. Whereas the English, they could just sail right across the Atlantic Ocean, land and dock at one of these ports all up and down the East Coast and just get off and be right there in the English colonies. So that's why there was such a big population here compared to such a small population in here in New France. Okay, so that's pretty much what's going to wrap up New France. You guys come back, we're going to start talking about the early English colonies over here and how they started those and things. So, all right, that's just 2 videos. We wrapped it up quick. You've got some questions on New France that are not difficult at all. Just try to get those things done before you come back. And when you guys come back, we'll talk just kind of quick about the election. Hopefully we'll have some results by Monday till you get back, and we'll move into new stuff. Okay, so that's it basically for this week. Just kind of watch the election if you're interested in that stuff, and think about that whole electoral college thing we talked about last week and how that all works. So we'll see who the winner is. Have a great rest of your week. Have a good, safe weekend, and we'll see you early next week. Bye-bye.